He pushed the last cardboard box labeled kitchen junk toward the door with his expensive shoe. "Let's be realistic, Jen," he sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "You're 38. You have no career. You have nothing." He leaned against the marble countertop of the kitchen he was keeping. "I'm giving you a generous settlement, but we both know it won't last. You'll never find someone better than me. You'll be lucky if you find anyone at all." She stood by the door, clutching her purse, her reflection warped in the steel of the high-end Sub-Zero fridge. His words were meant to be a curse, a final stamp of his superiority. He was wrong. He couldn't have known that his final cruel words were not an ending, but a prophecy, and that his ex-wife's vindication wouldn't just be quiet. It would be broadcast live to millions. The air in the minimalist million-dollar condo was thick with the smell of fresh paint and betrayal. Gregory Greg Shaw hadn't even waited for the ink to dry on the divorce papers before he'd had the entire place redone in shades of Arctic gray and slate. It was a cold, sterile environment perfectly matching the man who now surveyed his domain. Jennifer Jen Allen stood in the foyer, a stranger in the home she had spent 15 years building. Every piece of art she'd chosen was gone, replaced by abstract metal sculptures that looked like angry tangles of wire. "The movers took the last of your things," Greg said, not looking up from his phone. He was texting, a small, smug smile playing on his lips. Jen knew exactly who was on the other end. Tiffany, the 24-year-old paralegal from his real estate firm, Cushman & Wakefield, the one he'd been mentoring for the last year. "I know, Greg. I was just taking a final look," Jen murmured, her voice hoarse. He finally looked up, and his eyes were devoid of any warmth. They were the eyes of a businessman closing a deal. "A final look at what? This isn't your life anymore, Jennifer. It's time to accept that." 15 years, Greg. I supported you when you were just an intern. I put my own degree on hold to build this life with you." Her voice cracked a sound she despised. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry. Greg sighed, an exaggerated, impatient sound. He ran a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. "Oh, here we go. The 'I sacrificed everything' speech. Let's be clear. You put your degree, an art history degree, mind you, on hold because you didn't have the drive to finish it. I built this. I made the money. You just spent it. And frankly, you weren't even that good at it." The cruelty was so casual, so practiced. This was the man who used to bring her coffee in bed, the man who'd held her hand during a terrifying miscarriage years ago. That man was gone, replaced by this polished, empty shell. "I'm just trying to understand where this came from," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "It came from boredom, Jen," he said, stepping closer. He still wore the cologne she'd bought him for his last birthday, a woody, expensive scent from Tom Ford. Now it made her nauseous. "I'm a shark, Jen. I need to keep moving forward. You were ballast. Comfortable but heavy. I'm moving up. I'm aiming for partner. Tiffany understands that. She's hungry. You just want to bake." His disdain for her passion was a familiar knife. He'd always called her baking puttering. "So that's it." She straightened her back, pulling the strap of her worn leather bag onto her shoulder. The bag was a relic from before the money, a time she'd mistakenly thought was happier. "That's it." He pushed the last cardboard box labeled kitchen junk toward the door with his $800 Salvatore Ferragamo loafer. It was filled with her favorite whisks, her mother's old recipe book, and her well-worn apron. "Let's be realistic, Jen," he sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "You're 38. You have no career. You have nothing." He leaned against the marble countertop of the kitchen he was keeping. "I'm giving you a generous settlement, but we both know it won't last. You're not smart with money. You're too emotional." "It's not generous, Greg. It's half of what I'm owed. Your lawyers buried mine in paperwork." "That's how the game is played, sweetheart," he scoffed. "And you're not a player. You're a hobbyist. And the world is run by professionals." He paused, looking her up and down. She was wearing simple jeans, a worn sweater, and no makeup. Her dark curly hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She knew she looked tired. She felt ancient. "I'm just saying," he continued, "don't come crying to me in 6 months when you've blown through the cash and you're working as a barista, because I won't help you. I would never ask you for anything, Greg, ever again." "Good." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You'll never find someone better than me. You'll be lucky if you find anyone at all. I was the best thing that ever happened to you." The words hung in the air, cold and sharp as glass. "You'll never find someone better." It was his final verdict on her life. Jen stared at him, a flicker of something new. Not sadness, but a cold, hard anger igniting in her chest. She didn't say a word. She simply picked up the box of kitchen junk, turned, and walked out of the condo. She didn't look back as the heavy oak door clicked shut behind her, sealing off 15 years of her life. Down on the street, parked in a no-parking zone, was a gleaming white Mercedes-Benz C-Class. Tiffany was in the driver's seat, sunglasses on, tapping impatiently on her phone. She glanced up as Jen emerged, a look of pure, triumphant scorn on her face. Jen met her gaze, held it, and then walked past, her knuckles white as she gripped the cardboard box. Her new life was waiting. It was a tiny one-bedroom apartment on Pearl Street, smelling of old carpet and faint curry from the neighbors. It was a world away from the Arctic gray condo and the smell of Tom Ford. That night, Jen didn't unpack. She sat on the floor of her empty living room, the city lights of Denver just a distant glow. She opened the box labeled Kitchen Junk. She pulled out her mother's recipe book, the binding cracked and stained with vanilla extract. She cried. She cried for the man she'd loved, for the baby she'd lost, for the years she'd wasted. She cried until she was empty. And then around 2 a.m. she stood up. She walked into the tiny dated kitchen with its laminate counters and avocado green stove. She opened the recipe book to a page marked Grandma's Lemon Tart. She found the flour and sugar she'd bought on the way over. She found her whisk. And in the silence of her new small life, with Greg's curse echoing in her ears, "You'll never find someone better." Jen Allen started to bake. The sharp, clean scent of lemons began to fill the room, the first good smell in a very long time. She was a hobbyist. She was a nothing. But as she folded the butter into the flour, her hands for the first time in years felt steady. The first 6 months were a blur of powdered sugar and panic. The generous settlement after paying the deposit on the apartment and buying a used rattling 2008 Honda Civic was terrifyingly small. Jen knew Greg was right about one thing: it wouldn't last. She applied for jobs. She went to interviews at art galleries and museums. The responses were always the same. 15 years is a long gap, Mrs. Allen. We're looking for someone with more recent digital curation experience. She was a relic. The panic attacks started waking her in the cold dread of 3 a.m. Greg's voice was a constant loop in her head. "You're nothing without me. Lucky if you find anyone at all." Her only solace was the tiny kitchen. She baked. She baked to stay sane. She baked because it was the only thing she knew how to do well. She gave her creations away to her neighbors, to the mailman, to the woman at the dry cleaner. It was her best friend Sarah, a no-nonsense ER nurse, who finally snapped her out of it. Sarah came over after a 12-hour shift, took one bite of a chocolate lavender scone, and slammed her hand on the counter. "Jen, this is not a scone," Sarah declared. Jen flinched. "What's wrong with it?" It's a religious experience. It's a work of art, and you're giving it away." "I don't know what else to do with it, Sarah." "You sell it. You stop applying for jobs you don't even want. You take that kitchen junk box of yours and you turn it into a business." "A business, Sarah? I wouldn't even know how. A bakery." "No, not a bakery. Not yet. A farmer's market stall. The one at Cherry Creek. It's expensive, but it's the best. You've got to be around people who will pay for quality." So with Sarah's help, Jen liquidating the last of her old life, a pair of diamond earrings, Greg had bought her a designer handbag and used the money to buy a tent, a foldable table, a business license, and ingredients. In bulk. She called her fledgling business the Mixing Bowl. The first day at the Cherry Creek Farmers Market was a disaster. She woke up at 4 a.m. It was a cold, rainy May morning. Her tent almost blew away. People hurried past clutching coffee cups, heading for the established vendors. She'd made $300 worth of pastries. By 11 a.m. she had sold one muffin to a very sympathetic-looking child. She was packing up early, tears of humiliation stinging her eyes when a man stopped at her stall. He was tall, dressed in a simple, almost worn Patagonia jacket and jeans. He had kind, tired eyes and a few days' worth of stubble. He looked, Jen thought, as exhausted as she felt. "You're closing up?" he asked. His voice was quiet, gentle. "Seems so," Jen said, trying to sound breezy. "Not a big day for lemon tarts." He looked at the small, perfect tarts. "That's a shame. They look like the best ones here." "They're the only ones here," she said with a watery laugh. He smiled. "My wife. She used to love lemon tarts. I haven't had a good one in a long time." The "used to" hung in the air. Jen understood loss. "Well, take one. On the house," she said. "No, I couldn't. Please. Otherwise I'm just going to eat them all myself in my car." He chuckled, a nice warm sound. He pulled out his wallet. "I'll take 4. And I'm paying for all of them." He paid with a crisp $100 bill and told her to keep the change. I don't have change for this," she stammered. "Then I guess I'll have to come back next week to get my change in pastries," he said. He picked up the bag. "Thank you. These smell like hope." He walked away before she could say anything else. His name was Rob. He came back the next week. And the week after. He became her first regular. He never talked about his work. He talked about books, about the weather, about her baking. He'd ask, "What's the story behind this one?" And she'd tell him about her grandmother's oatmeal cookies or the pear and cardamom bread she'd invented when she couldn't sleep. He was just Rob, a kind, quiet man who liked her baking. Her business grew, slowly, painfully. She wasn't getting rich, but she was paying her rent. The Mixing Bowl was getting a small, loyal following. Then one sun-drenched Saturday in July, the past walked up to her stall. Greg and Tiffany. Jen's stomach dropped to the floor. Greg was wearing a crisp polo shirt and expensive sunglasses. Tiffany, clinging to his arm, looked like a living Instagram filter, all perfect teeth and highlighted hair. "Well, well, well," Greg said, his voice loud enough for the other customers to hear. He looked at her tent, her handwritten sign, her simple pastries. The same sneer she remembered from the condo was plastered on his face. "A little bake sale. How quaint." "Hello, Greg," Jen said, her hands gripping the edge of her table. I'm almost impressed," he continued, gesturing to her lemon tarts. "You finally found a way to make money from your puttering. How much do you clear a day? $50, $100? Tiffany giggled, a high, tinkling sound. "It's cute, Greg, like a little girl's lemonade stand." "So this is what you're doing," Greg said, his voice dropping to a faux sympathetic tone. "This is the big new life, selling cookies in a tent. I told you, Jen. I told you this is where you'd end up." Jen's face was burning. She could feel the eyes of her other customers. She could see Mrs. Davis, her elderly jam vendor neighbor, looking on with concern. "I'm working, Greg," Jen said, her voice shaking but firm. "I'm supporting myself. Please, if you're not going to buy anything, I have other customers." Greg laughed. "Buy something, honey. I can buy a real bakery. I don't need this." He waved a dismissive hand. "It's just sad. I almost feel sorry for you." "Don't," Jen said, her anger finally eclipsing her shame. "Don't you dare feel sorry for me. You don't have the right." "Oh, feisty," Tiffany chimed in, stepping forward. "Look, Jen, I'm glad you're Keeping busy. But Greg and I were on our way to brunch at the Broadmoor. We're closing on a house in Cherry Hills next week. He's doing so well. She patted Greg's arm. He just made partner at the firm. It was a lie. Jen knew he was still just a vice president. But the lie was for her benefit. Congratulations, Jen said, her voice flat. Yeah, well. Greg tossed a $20 bill on the table. It landed on a tray of scones. Here, for old time's sake, buy yourself a new apron or something. He and Tiffany turned and walked away laughing. Jen stared at the $20 bill crumpled on her pastries. She felt the same old cold shame wash over her. You'll never find someone better. You're nothing. She didn't see Rob standing at the edge of the tent holding his usual bag, having witnessed the entire ugly exchange. His kind eyes were now cold, and they weren't looking at Jen. They were fixed on Greg's retreating back. He watched them get into a brand-new metallic blue Porsche Cayenne and speed off. He stepped up to the table. Jen was trying to discreetly throw away the scone the money had touched. "Don't throw it away," Rob said quietly. Jen jumped startled. "Rob, I'm sorry you saw that." "He's your ex-husband," Rob stated. It wasn't a question. Jen nodded, her throat tight. "He seems unpleasant." "That's one word for it," Jen said, trying for a laugh and failing. Rob pushed the $20 bill back toward her. "Take this." "I don't want it." "Take it. Put it in your register. It's the price of admission for the show he just put on. Don't let him think he got to you." He then pulled out his own wallet. "And I'll take my usual 4 lemon tarts, and a dozen of those scones he insulted." Jen looked at him, gratitude welling up. "Rob, you don't have to do that." "I know," he said, handing her the cash. "But I want to. That man, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Your work is incredible, Jen, and so are you." He left, and Jen watched him go, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the July sun. She took Greg's $20 bill and, smoothing it out, put it in her cash box. It was the last dollar he would ever give her. Summer bled into fall. The mixing bowl was turning a real, albeit tiny, profit. Jen had moved from just the Saturday market to Sundays as well. She'd hired a part-time helper, a college student named Maria. The 4 a.m. mornings were still brutal, but the work felt honest. It felt like hers. Her friendship with Rob deepened. He was no longer just a customer, he was a friend. They'd grab coffee after the market closed, sitting on a park bench talking for hours. She learned about his wife Sarah, a different Sarah who had passed away 2 years prior, after a long battle with cancer. He spoke of her with a profound, gentle sadness, but also with a smile. He told her he'd been drifting, as he put it, before he'd stumbled on her stall. He in turn learned about Greg, not the details of the abuse, but the ghost of it. He understood the shadow, as he called it, that Greg had cast over her. "He defined you," Rob said one crisp October afternoon, "and now you're getting to define yourself. It's the hardest and best work a person can do." Jen felt a pull toward him, a safe, quiet attraction she hadn't allowed herself to feel. But he was just Rob, her kind, widowed friend. She was just Jen, the divorced baker. It was simple. One Tuesday, Jen was elbow-deep in flour testing a new pumpkin chai recipe when her phone buzzed. An email. The subject line read, "Media Inquiry, Good Day Denver." Her heart hammered. Good Day Denver was the city's #1 morning show. She opened it with trembling, flour-dusted fingers. "Dear Ms. Allen, my name is Brenda Walsh, and I am a producer for Good Day Denver on Channel 7. We are running a new segment called Community Spotlight, focusing on local entrepreneurs who have started fresh and are making a difference. Your name was recommended to us as an inspiring local success story. We would love to feature you and the Mixing Bowl live in our studio next Friday, October 20th, during the 8 a.m. hour. Please let me know if you are available. We think your story is exactly what our viewers need to see. Best, Brenda Walsh, producer. Good Day Denver." Jen read it 3 times. A mistake. It had to be a mistake. Who recommended her? She called Sarah the nurse. Was it you? Did you call Channel 7? What? Jen, I'm stitching up a guy who tried to juggle a chainsaw. I love you, but no. Why? Jen told her. Sarah screamed so loud the patient probably jumped. You're going to be famous. You have to do it. Jen was terrified. Live TV. What if she said something stupid? What if she froze? What if Greg saw? The thought of Greg seeing her almost made her decline. He would mock her. He would find a way to tear it down. She told Rob about it at the market that Saturday. His reaction was immediate and absolute. You must do it, Jen. But Rob, I'm a baker. I'm not a story. And I'll be terrible. I'll get nervous and drop a scone on the floor. He put his hands on her shoulders, his gaze steady. Jen, look at me. Your story is inspiring. You built this from nothing. You took your pain and you made something beautiful out of it. People need to see that. You need to see that. Who even recommended me? Rob smiled a little mysteriously. Denver is a small town. Word gets around about the best lemon tarts. She agreed. The next few days were a blur of panic planning and baking. Brenda, the producer, was incredibly kind. Just be yourself, she advised over the phone. People will love you. Meanwhile, Greg Shaw was not having a good month. The real estate market had taken a dip. A huge deal he'd been counting on in the tech center had fallen through, and Tiffany was becoming expensive. Her demands for designer bags and weekends in Aspen were constant. He was feeling the pressure. He learned about Jen's TV spot from his mother, who had seen a short promo for it. Isn't that nice? His mother had said. Jennifer is going to be on the news for her little bakery. Greg's blood ran cold. On TV. His failed cast-off wife. Being celebrated. It was an insult. It was a reflection on him. It suggested she was fine without him. He picked up his phone. He found the contact for a guy he'd played golf with, someone high up in ad sales at Channel 7. He sent a text. Hey Mark, need a number for a producer on your morning show? Brenda Walsh. Have some background on a guest she's booked. It's important. He got the number. He called Brenda. Brenda Walsh speaking. Ms. Walsh, my name is Gregory Shaw. I'm Jennifer Allen's ex-husband. There was a pause. Okay. Look, I'm calling out of concern, Greg said, his voice smooth and practiced. Jen, she's not well. She's been through a very difficult, very public breakdown. This divorce, it's unhinged her. Putting her on live TV, I think it's irresponsible. She's fragile. She's unstable. I'm worried she'll have an episode right on your set. It would be a disaster for her and for your show. He laid it on thick, emotional instability, prone to hysterics, not in her right mind. He painted a picture of a woman on the edge. There was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Brenda spoke, her voice clipped and professional. Mr. Shaw, thank you for your concern. I have met with Ms. Allen. I have also coincidentally heard a few things about you. Let me be very clear. We are not canceling the segment. In fact, we're extending it. Have a nice day. She hung up. Greg stared at his phone, his face purple with rage. She'd heard things about him. How dare she? He threw his phone across his office, where it smashed against one of the metal wire sculptures. He was furious. He'd watch the show. He'd watch her crash and burn. He'd watch her humiliate herself, proving him right. He'd even call Tiffany into his office to watch it with him. You've got to see this, he texted her. My crazy ex-wife is about to have a meltdown on Good Day Denver. It's going to be hilarious. He had no idea what he had just set in motion. Brenda, the producer, immediately got on her headset and called the control room. I want 2 extra cameras on this segment, and get me a feed to the green room. Our other guest needs to see this. The day of the broadcast, Jen woke up at 3 a.m., not to bake, but to be sick. Her nerves were shredded. She tried to practice what she was going to say, but her mind was blank. All she could hear was Greg's voice. You're a hobbyist. You're fragile. You're nothing. What if he was right? What if she got on set and just broke? At 5 a.m. her phone buzzed. A text from Rob. "Jen, I'm outside. I have coffee." She ran down. He was there leaning against a black Audi that looked much nicer than she'd ever noticed. He was wearing his usual jeans but with a nice button-down shirt. He handed her a coffee. "Rob, what are you doing here? It's pouring rain." "I'm your ride," he said simply. "You didn't think I'd let you drive yourself, did you? You'd end up in Nebraska." She started to cry right there on the sidewalk. "I can't do this, Rob. I'm so scared." He didn't hug her. He just stood there solid as a rock. "Yes, you can. You're scared. That's normal. But you're also the woman who built a business from scratch while her entire life was falling apart. You're the strongest person I know. This is just talking. What do I even say? You tell the truth. You tell them about your grandmother's recipes. You tell them why you love the smell of lemons and cardamom. You tell them your story, not the part about him," he said, his voice hardening, "but the part about you." He looked at his watch. "I have to be somewhere this morning, a big meeting. But I'll be watching. I promise. I'll text you the second you're done. Now get in the car. You're going to be great." He drove her to the Channel 7 studio, the big meeting clearly on his mind. He seemed preoccupied checking his phone, but he was still a calming presence. He dropped her at the front entrance, gave her a quick supportive squeeze on the arm, and said, "Knock 'em dead, Jen. I'll be rooting for you." She watched him drive off, his words giving her a small flickering flame of confidence. The studio was chaotic. People with headsets were running everywhere. Brenda, the producer, met her, a warm smile on her face and a fire in her eyes. "Jen, you look fantastic. We're so excited." She was bustled into makeup, where a kind woman covered the dark circles under her eyes. She had brought her best pastries arranged on beautiful wooden boards Rob had helped her pick out. They set them up on the Good Day Denver kitchen set. It looked professional. Her work, on TV. Brenda led her to the green room. "Mike, the host, will be in to prep you in a minute. We go live at 8:15. Just relax." Jen sat on a plush couch, her leg bouncing. The TV in the green room was playing the show, currently on a long commercial for a car dealership. A few minutes later, another man was escorted into the green room. He was older, in an impeccably tailored navy blue suit, carrying a sleek leather briefcase. He looked powerful. He nodded politely at Jen and sat on the other side of the room, immediately getting on his phone. A lawyer, Jen thought, or a politician. Meanwhile, across town, Greg Shaw poured himself a cup of coffee. He'd come into his Cushman and Wakefield office early. Tiffany sauntered in at 8:10, latte in hand. "Is it time? Is the train wreck about to start?" she asked, perching on his desk. "Any minute now," Greg said, turning on the small TV in his office. 8:15. Get ready to cringe." Back at the studio, Mike Daniels, the host, bounded in. He was all teeth and spray tan. "Jen, you're the baker. Great to meet you. Smells amazing in here." He started running through his questions. "So the mixing bowl. Tell me how that started." As they talked, the man in the suit glanced up from his phone. He was watching Jen, a small, curious smile on his face. "And we're back in 5, a voice yelled from the hall. Mike clapped his hands. "All right, Jen, let's go sell some scones." Brenda led Jen to the set. The lights were blindingly hot. A cameraman wheeled a huge camera right up to her face. Jen's heart felt like it was going to beat out of her chest. "And we're live." Mike smiled a perfect, gleaming smile. "Welcome back to Good Day Denver. If you're just joining us, we're here with our community spotlight. And I am so excited about this one. Folks, meet Jennifer Allen, the owner and founder of the unbelievably good local bakery, The Mixing Bowl." The camera's red light glowed. Jen swallowed, her throat dry as dust. "Jen," Mike said, "these pastries are gorgeous. Tell us, how did The Mixing Bowl begin?" Jen looked at the camera. She pictured Greg and Tiffany watching, waiting for her to fail. Then she pictured Rob. "Tell them your story." She took a deep breath. "Well, Mike," she began, her voice shaking only slightly. "The Mixing Bowl. It started about a year ago. I I was going through a very difficult transition in my life. In his office, Greg leaned in. Here it comes, the breakdown. I'd lost a lot. Jen continued, finding her rhythm. And I found myself in a new apartment with not much else but my grandmother's old recipe book. And I just started baking. I baked because it was the one thing that made sense. It was the one thing that felt like me. And I guess I baked my way back to life. She was good. She was really good. She was natural, vulnerable, and strong. She wasn't just not failing, she was glowing. She talked about her passion for local ingredients, about the joy of seeing a customer's face when they bit into a scone. Greg's smile faded. She rehearsed this, he muttered. She's actually, really good, Tiffany said, sounding disappointed. Mike took a bite of a lemon tart. His eyes widened comically. Jen, I'm not kidding, this is the best lemon tart I have ever had. In my life. Jen blushed. Thank you. It's an old family recipe. Well, the family is brilliant, Mike said, and we're so inspired by your story. A true second act. In the green room, the man in the suit was watching the monitor, his phone forgotten. He was smiling broadly. Now, Jen, Mike said, turning to the camera, we heard you have one customer in particular who is a huge fan, a very loyal customer who comes to your stall every single week. Jen looked confused. I have a few regulars. They're all wonderful. Mike's grin widened. Yes, but this one, in fact, he's the one who suggested you for this spot. He called our producer Brenda personally. Jen was blank. He did who? He said you know him as Rob, Mike said. And he's here today. But Rob, well, he's a little more than just a fan. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Robert Lawson. Jen's blood turned to ice. What? The man from the green room, the powerful man in the suit, was now walking onto the set, shaking Mike's hand. Greg Shaw in his office froze. His coffee mug slipped from his hand and shattered on his desk, splashing hot coffee over quarterly reports. No, Greg whispered. No, that's not Robert Lawson. Tiffany, daughter of a finance broker, knew exactly who he was. Oh my God, she breathed. That's the Robert Lawson, CEO of Lawson Global Tech. He's one of the richest men in the state. He's a billionaire, Greg. A billionaire. On the screen, Robert Lawson. Rob was walking past the host and straight toward a completely shell-shocked Jen. He took her hands. He was smiling, his eyes, the same kind, tired eyes she'd always known were sparkling. You're doing amazing, Jen, he said, his voice quiet just for her, though the mic picked it up. Rob, she whispered, her mind unable to compute. The suit. Lawson Global Tech. You told me you had a meeting. I did, he said, turning to Mike but still holding Jen's hand. With your producer Brenda, and then with my legal team. He gestured to the man in the green room who was now standing at the side of the set, briefcase open. Robert? Mr. Lawson? What on earth is going on? Mike, the host, stammered, looking at his teleprompter, which was now just a blank, useless screen. The segment was off the rails, and it was just getting started. The studio was in a state of controlled chaos. Brenda, the producer, was in the control booth, headset clamped on, speaking in a low, urgent voice. Stay on the two-shot, get a camera on Mike's reaction, and whatever you do, do not go to commercial. On set, Mike Daniels was visibly sweating under his makeup. Robert Lawson. This is an incredible surprise. We are honored to have you. I had no idea you were a fan of Good Day Denver. Rob finally let go of Jen's hands, though he kept a proprietary arm around her waist, anchoring her. Jen herself hadn't moved. She was staring at the man she thought she knew, this quiet widower in a Patagonia jacket, who was now revealed as one of the most powerful tech innovators in the country. the man whose name was on the side of the Lawson Innovation Center downtown. "I'm not just a fan of the show, Mike," Robert said, his voice calm and authoritative, the gentle Rob persona replaced by a CEO's command. "I'm a fan of Jennifer. I've been a fan since the first day I tasted one of her pastries." So you're the Rob who recommended her?" Mike asked, trying to regain control of his show. "I am," Robert said. "I called Brenda. I told her that if she was looking for a story about resilience, about talent, about someone turning grit and passion into a real-life success, she had to meet Jen." He turned and looked directly at Jen, his expression softening back into the man she knew. "I'm sorry for the deception, Jen. The just Rob thing. When my wife passed the world, it became very loud. Everyone was Mr. Lawson. Everyone wanted something. I started going to that farmer's market because it was the one place I could just be a guy. Anonymous. And then I met you." Jen's mind was racing. The old Audi. The talk of a meeting. The Patagonia jacket. A classic Silicon Valley stealth wealth uniform she'd been too naive to recognize. You own Lawson Global Tech." She whispered the words, feeling absurd on her tongue. "I do," he said. In Greg's office, Tiffany was frantically Googling on her phone. "Greg, his net worth is estimated at $4.8 billion. He's divorced, no widower. His wife died. He's the most eligible bachelor in the country, and he's buying scones from her." Greg was silent. He was staring at the screen, at the way this billionaire was looking at his ex-wife, the way he was touching her. It was a look of pure adoration, a look Greg himself had never not once given her. An icy dread, far colder than his earlier anger, was creeping up his spine. "But Mr. Lawson," Mike the host pressed, "surely you're not just here to endorse the lemon tarts. This is a big gesture." "It is," Robert said, his smile fading. He turned not just to Mike but to camera one, the main camera, the one broadcasting to all of Denver. He was looking, Jen realized, right at Greg. "I'm here," Robert said, his voice dropping, "because I have a story too. I told you I met Jen when I was drifting. I was lost. I'd spent 2 years in a fog of grief, and I met this woman who was building a new life from the ashes of her old one, a life that had been torn down by a man who didn't deserve her." Jen's breath hitched. "Rob, no, it's okay," he said, squeezing her arm. "It's time. You see, Mike, Jen's ex-husband, he's a piece of work, a real estate executive over at Cushman & Wakefield, a man named Gregory Shaw." Boom. The name landed. In the control room, Brenda's jaw dropped. In Greg's office, Greg himself stood up so fast his chair flew back and hit the wall. He named me. He named my firm." Tiffany looked horrified. "Greg." "This man," Robert continued, his voice resonating with cold, controlled fury, "didn't just divorce Jen. He tried to destroy her. He told her she was nothing. He told her she was a hobbyist. He told her she was unstable. In fact," and here he looked right at Brenda, who nodded grimly, "he even called this station yesterday. He tried to get this segment canceled. He told our producer that Jen was fragile and prone to hysterics." Mike Daniels looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He did, Robert confirmed. "He tried to sabotage her. The same way he did just a few months ago when he came to her market stall to mock her, to tell her she was a failure, to throw money at her like she was a beggar." Jen was shaking. This was her private humiliation now being blasted to the entire city. "And," Robert's voice boomed, "he told her one more thing. He looked her in the eye and he told her, 'You'll never find someone better than me.'" Greg Shaw sank back into his chair. He was as pale as a ghost. His office phone began to ring, then his cell phone, then Tiffany's. "He was wrong," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. He turned away from the cameras, away from Mike, and faced Jen fully. The world shrank. It was just the two of them standing in a circle of hot light. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every micro-expression. "He was wrong about everything," Robert said, his eyes, those kind, familiar eyes, now shining with tears. "You're not nothing, Jen. You are everything. You're the strongest, kindest, most brilliant and resilient woman I have ever met. You're not unstable. You're the most grounded person I know. And your baking, it's not a hobby. It's art. It's the hope that I was missing." "Rob," she breathed, tears streaming down her face. "He told you you'd never find someone better." Robert took a shaky breath. "And I'm not him. I'm not arrogant. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be better. Trying to be the man that you deserve." And then, to the sound of a million jaws dropping across the city, the tech billionaire Robert Lawson dropped to one knee on the set of Good Day Denver. He reached into his suit jacket. He pulled out a small velvet box. Not from Tiffany & Co., not from a mall jeweler. It was a deep dark blue. From Graf. "Jen," he said, his voice cracking, You saved me. You baked your way back to life, and in the process you saved mine. You taught me how to live again, how to laugh again. I don't want to buy your lemon tarts just on Saturdays anymore. I want to wake up to them and to you every morning for the rest of my life." He opened the box. The ring. It wasn't just a ring. It was a star. A massive cushion-cut diamond, at least 10 carats, flanked by 2 smaller perfect sapphires. It was elegant, timeless, and worth more than Greg's condo, his Porsche, and his entire commission for the year combined. In his office, Tiffany let out a small, strangled squeak. "Jennifer Allen," Robert Lawson said, his voice ringing with absolute sincerity. "You are my second act. You're my only act. Will you marry me?" The studio was so quiet you could hear the hum of the cameras. Jen stood frozen, the tears on her face illuminated by the studio lights. She looked at the ring, then at the man kneeling before her. This was not a dream. This was Rob. Her Rob, who just happened to be a billionaire kneeling on a cheap kitchen set asking her to marry him. All the old voices, Greg sneering, the "you're not good enough," the 15-year gap, they all just evaporated. They were burned away by the genuine, loving, hopeful look in Robert's eyes. She took a deep, shuddering breath, and she smiled. "Yes," she whispered. "What was that?" Robert whispered back, a grin spreading across his face. "Yes," she said louder. "Yes, Rob. 1,000 times yes." Robert let out a laugh of pure relief and joy. He slid the enormous diamond onto her finger. It was a perfect fit. He stood up, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her. It wasn't a chaste television-friendly peck. It was a real kiss, passionate and full of promise, right there on live TV. The studio crew, the producer, even Mike, the host, erupted in applause. Mike, recovering, stumbled back into frame. "Well, I think that's a yes. Congratulations to Jennifer Allen and Robert Lawson. We have to go to a commercial break. Wow. Just wow." The second the show cut to commercial, Brenda's voice came over the studio loudspeaker. "That's the best damn television I've made in 20 years. As the ads for Chevy Truck Month rolled, Greg Shaw's world was ending. His office phone, his cell phone, they were both ringing off the hook. He looked at the caller ID, the managing partner of his firm, the head of HR, his mother. He ignored them. He was staring at the dark screen, at the after image of that ring, that kiss. He planned it," Greg whispered. "The whole thing. He tanked my career on live TV." "He didn't just tank it, Greg," Tiffany said, her voice shaking. She was already backing toward the door, grabbing her purse. "He nuked it. From orbit. He named you. He named the firm." "Tiffany, where are you going?" "Where am I going?" She looked at him, her pretty face twisted in a mask of contempt and panic. "I'm going to my car. I'm going to my apartment, and I'm going to block your number. I am not going down with you. Down with me, I'm a partner. Or, I'm making partner. You're a joke, Greg, she shrieked. You're the guy who let a billionaire's fiancé slip through your fingers because you were busy with me. You told me you were the catch. You told me she was nothing. You're a fool. The entire city just watched you get checkmated by a man who could buy this entire building with his pocket change. But us, he stammered. There is no us, she spat. You're radioactive. I'm not tying my future to you, the guy who mocked the lemon tarts of the future Mrs. Robert Lawson. She yanked open his office door and was gone. Greg was left in the silence, broken only by the incessant shrill ringing of his phones. He looked at the shattered mug on his desk, the coffee soaking into the papers. You'll never find someone better. He had been so sure. It had been his one true belief. He was the prize. On the TV, the commercials ended. Mike Daniels was back looking dazed. Welcome back to Good Day Denver. We are still processing the most incredible thing that has ever happened on this show. Jennifer, congratulations. That ring. Jen, who was now sitting on a stool, her hands securely in Robert's, laughed. It's a bit much, isn't it? She joked. It's not enough, Robert said, kissing her hand. Now Jen and I have to go, but before we do, I have one last piece of business. He looked at the camera again. The man in the suit, his lawyer, stepped onto the set and handed him a folder. Mr. Shaw, Robert said, his voice flat and cold as steel. You'll be hearing from my legal team. Slander, defamation of character, and intentional infliction of emotional distress are just the beginning. But that's not this. He held up a single crisp piece of paper. This, he said, is a check for $1 million. The studio gasped. It's not for Mr. Shaw. It's for the mixing bowl. No, that's not right. The mixing bowl is perfect as it is. This is the first investment in the Second Act Fund, a new foundation I'm establishing in Jennifer's name. A foundation that will provide grants and startup capital to women just like Jen who are rebuilding their lives and starting businesses after divorce or loss. He handed the check to Jen. She looked at it, her name next to a staggering number of zeros, and she just sobbed a final cleansing wave of emotion. But, Robert added, we will be expanding the mixing bowl. Jen's lemon tarts are going national. Greg Shaw watched numb. It wasn't just a proposal, it was an execution. His ex-wife hadn't just found someone better. She'd found a king, and he had just publicly declared war on the jester who had hurt his queen. The show ended. Jen and Robert were ushered out a back entrance past a sudden frantic swarm of reporters who had gotten the tip. The story was already exploding. It was on TMZ, Page 6, Forbes, and the Denver Post. Tech billionaire Robert Lawson proposes to local baker on live TV. The lemon tart proposal. As they got into Robert's car, a sleek black Bentley, this time driven by a chauffeur, Jen finally turned to him, the $1 million check in her hand. A foundation's second act, she asked. I told you I had a meeting. He smiled. My lawyers were drafting the paperwork. I was going to do it anyway. The proposal, that was a bit more spontaneous. Seeing you on that set so strong and so beautiful, I couldn't wait another second. And the part about Greg naming him, Robert's smile vanished. That was planned. When Brenda told me what he'd done, that he'd tried to hurt you again, I decided it was time for the world to know exactly who he is, and more importantly, who you are. I love you, Rob, she said, leaning her head on his shoulder, the 10-carat diamond feeling impossibly heavy and impossibly right on her finger. I love you, Jen. Now, let's go get some breakfast. I know a place. The fallout was immediate. By 10 a.m., Greg Shaw was called into his managing partner's office at Cushman & Wakefield. The meeting was short. The corporate office, our clients. They all saw the show, the partner said, his voice cold. Robert Lawson named us on live television. We have a morals clause, Greg. You are fired. Effective immediately. He was escorted out by security carrying his possessions in a box, a bitter echo of the one he'd pushed at Jen. His personal life collapsed just as fast. Tiffany, seeing her future tied to a radioactive man, had already blocked his number. When Greg arrived at his condo, his key didn't work. He'd put her on the lease. She'd already changed the locks. He ended up at a budget hotel, forced to watch himself become a national villain. TMZ had found a bystander's video of him sneering at Jen's market stall, and they played it on a loop next to the clip of Robert's tearful, loving proposal. Team Jen was trending. While Greg's name became poison, Jen's became an inspiration. The Second Act Fund was a viral sensation. Robert's initial $1 million investment was matched by his billionaire friends, and the foundation had over $10 million before it even had a website. To escape the media storm, Robert took Jen to his private villa in Lake Como. There they planned. Jen was adamant she would not stop baking. The mixing bowl was her identity. So they decided to expand not as a soulless franchise, but as a beautiful flagship bakery in Denver. It would double as a training center for the Second Act Fund, staffing its kitchen entirely with women rebuilding their own lives. Their wedding 6 months later was the opposite of their proposal. It was private, held in the small community garden near Jen's first apartment. Sarah, the nurse, was her maid of honor. Greg's fate was the inverse. Unemployable in Denver, he sold his Porsche, lost the condo, and fled the state. The last anyone heard, he'd changed his name and was working as a used car salesman, a big shot no one believed. 1 year after the proposal, Good Day Denver broadcast a follow-up from the bustling, successful mixing bowl. Mike Daniels found Jen not in a suit but in her flour-dusted apron. "Jen," he said, "you've built an empire of hope." Jen laughed, her diamonds sparkling. "The ring is nice, but—" She pointed to a single mom, now her head baker, laughing as she decorated a cake. That's the real story. Robert joined them back in his Rob uniform and kissed his wife. "I'm the lucky one," he told the camera. "I got the girl and a lifetime supply of the best lemon tarts in the world." And just like that, Jen's story proves that the end of one chapter is never really the end. It's the beginning of a second act. She went from being told she was nothing to becoming the head of a foundation changing hundreds of lives. She lost a man who saw her as a hobby and gained a man who saw her as his entire world. Karma, as they say, always has a way of balancing the books. And sometimes it does it on live television. What did you think of Greg's downfall? Did he get what he deserved? And what about Robert's grand gesture? Was it the most romantic proposal ever? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If you love this story of justice and second chances, please give this video a like, share it with someone who needs to hear that their best days are still ahead, and make sure you subscribe to our channel and ring that bell. You won't want to miss the next story we have for you.